We hear a lot about hybrids and battery electric vehicles, but we do believe that there's a real need for fuel cell.
Ford and Honda are now joining Toyota in killing the all-electric future. Instead of betting everything on batteries, they're pouring resources into a new generation of engines that could keep combustion alive and clean. This breakthrough could change the EV race entirely. For years, it felt like the future of cars was decided. Governments were setting deadlines to phase out gas and diesel. Automakers were pouring billions into EV development. The message was clear. Electric was the only way forward, but not everyone bought into that vision, especially Toyota. While rivals were racing to go all electric, Toyota quietly pushed back. They weren't saying no to cleaner cars, far from it, but they didn't believe batteries were the single solution. Instead, Toyota doubled down on hybrids, kept working on hydrogen fuel cell vehicles like the Mirai, and even invested heavily in solid-state battery technology. Their reasoning was batteries still had serious drawbacks: expensive materials, slow charging, and heavy weight. Toyota argued that a mix of solutions would serve consumers better. Now other automakers are starting to follow their lead. Honda, for example, is partnering with GM to develop hydrogen-powered commercial trucks, a move that targets industries where EV charging just isn't practical. Hydrogen refueling takes minutes, not hours, which is a big deal for fleet operators who can't afford downtime. Even Ford is making moves that suggest they're not going all in on electric. Yes, they've launched EVs like the Mustang Mach-E and F-150 Lightning, but they're also exploring ways to keep internal combustion alive, especially for their muscle cars. The sound, the feel, the connection to the engine. Ford knows that's hard to replicate with a battery. And now, thanks to new technology, combustion engines might be able to run cleanly enough to survive the EV era. The new engine breakdown. Toyota is leading the charge in what could be a game-changing development: hydrogen-fueled combustion engines. Unlike hydrogen fuel cells, which use chemical reactions to generate electricity, these are traditional style engines that burn hydrogen instead of gasoline. The result is almost no CO2 emissions, but the same visceral driving feel that enthusiasts love. Toyota has even tested this tech in real competition. Their hydrogen-powered Corolla race car has already hit the track in Japan's Super Taikyu Endurance Series. They're not working alone either. Mazda has a long history with unconventional engines, and they've been experimenting with rotary hydrogen engines. The rotary design is compact and lightweight, which could make it perfect for hydrogen combustion. While Mazda hasn't announced a production hydrogen car yet, their research shows the tech could work in sports cars and range extenders alike. Yamaha is also in the game. They've partnered with Toyota to develop a hydrogen-powered V8 engine. Yes, a naturally aspirated V8 that runs on hydrogen. Early prototypes suggest it could keep the roar and performance of a traditional engine while dramatically cutting emissions. This could be a lifeline for high-performance vehicles in a tightening regulatory environment. It's not just Japanese automakers experimenting either. BMW has unveiled the iX5 Hydrogen,
The BMW iX5 is a hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle.
a fuel cell SUV that offers over 300 miles of range and can be refueled in about 3 to 4 minutes. While it's still a limited production vehicle, it signals that BMW sees hydrogen as a real alternative, not just a niche experiment. Then there's Porsche, taking a slightly different route with e-fuels, synthetic fuels made from captured CO2 and green hydrogen. In Chile, Porsche and partners have opened a pilot plant producing these carbon-neutral fuels. The beauty of e-fuels is that they can be used in existing gas engines without modification, potentially keeping millions of current cars on the road while slashing their carbon footprint. Taken together, these developments point to something big. The combustion engine isn't dead yet. In fact, it might be about to get a second life. That leads us into EV backlash and motivation. For years, the narrative around electric cars has been that they're the clean, inevitable replacement for gas-powered vehicles. But as EVs have moved from early adopters to the mass market, cracks in that vision have started to show. And those cracks are exactly why Ford, Honda, Toyota, and others are exploring alternatives like hydrogen and e-fuels. One of the biggest issues is range anxiety, the fear of running out of power before you can recharge. Even though many EVs today can go over 250 miles on a single charge, that's still less than a full tank of gas, and it drops significantly in cold weather or when towing. Real-world examples are everywhere. Ford's own F-150 Lightning, for instance, sees a massive range drop when pulling a trailer, in some cases losing over 50% of its advertised range. For drivers in rural areas or on long trips, that's a serious limitation. Then there's the charging infrastructure problem. In cities, public charging stations are getting more common, but outside urban centers, they can be few and far between. Even in places with chargers, reliability is a problem. Studies in California have found that a significant percentage of public chargers are out of order at any given time. Compare that to a gas station network that's mature, fast, and everywhere. For hydrogen vehicles, the infrastructure challenge is even bigger right now, but at least refueling, when stations exist, takes just minutes instead of hours. Cost is another factor. Battery production is expensive, not just in dollars, but in environmental impact. Lithium, cobalt, and nickel mining raises concerns about pollution, water use, and labor practices. Even as battery prices fall, EVs are still often priced higher than equivalent gas models. Some consumers are willing to pay the premium, but others see it as an unnecessary expense, especially if they drive in ways that make EV ownership less convenient. Finally, there's the policy tension. Many governments have announced future bans on new combustion engine sales. The EU from 2035, California and several other US states around the same timeline. But public opinion isn't fully on board. In the UK, for example, pushback over the 2030 ban led to its delay. Automakers know that forcing consumers into a single technology too quickly can create backlash and hurt sales. By developing hydrogen and e-fuels alongside EVs, companies are hedging their bets. If battery-only mandates soften, they'll be ready with cleaner combustion tech that still appeals to traditional car buyers. And when you zoom out, that safety net starts to look less like a backup plan and more like a shared industry strategy. What this means. When you look at the bigger picture, a pattern starts to emerge. Toyota, Honda, Ford, Mazda, BMW, Porsche, they're all making moves that suggest they don't believe the future will be 100% electric. Instead, they're betting on a multi-path future where several clean technologies exist side by side. Part of it comes down to risk management. If governments stick to strict EV mandates, these companies can still roll out competitive battery electric models. But if consumer pushback, infrastructure challenges, or political changes slow the EV transition, they'll have an alternative ready to go, one that can use existing fueling networks or be adapted from current engine platforms. There's also the speed of scaling to think about. Building out a nationwide EV charging network will take years, possibly decades, and it requires massive investment. Hydrogen and e-fuels, on the other hand, could be rolled out faster in certain sectors. For example, long-haul trucking, buses, and heavy equipment could adopt hydrogen with centralized fueling hubs, while e-fuels could be used immediately in existing gas cars without changing a single bolt under the hood. That flexibility is attractive to automakers who need to serve diverse global markets. But there's still a big question mark hanging over all of this. Will governments allow these cleaner combustion options to compete? In theory, carbon-neutral fuels and hydrogen engines could meet emissions targets without requiring every driver to switch to an EV. In practice, some policymakers view them as distractions from the battery electric push. If regulations are written in a way that favors only one technology, these alternative solutions could be sidelined, no matter how clean they are. So, what we're seeing now isn't just an engineering race. It's a political and market gamble. Automakers are hedging their bets, trying to stay ahead no matter which way the wind blows. Whether that gamble pays off will depend as much on consumer demand and infrastructure as it does on breakthroughs in the lab. So now the big question is, if Ford and Honda really follow Toyota's path, what happens next? Will electric cars keep their crown as the future of driving? Or are we about to witness a surprising comeback for combustion engines? Only this time running clean on hydrogen and e-fuels? We could be standing at the start of a new era, one where the roar of a V8 doesn't mean pollution, where filling up takes minutes instead of hours, and where the electric or nothing debate suddenly gets a lot more complicated. The world's biggest car makers are clearly preparing for more than one ending to this story. Which one we get might just depend on how fast these new engines can prove themselves and whether governments let them.